Before we begin, thank you very much to El Bozo for joining the Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/TJOmega. The help is always appreciated, genuinely keeps the channel alive. Thank you so much for everyone who pitches in and helps me keep doing what I love to do. And today, what I love to do is go back over the War for Cybertron trilogy and kind of examine what worked and what didn't from our most recent series of Transformer toys. Now that it's basically over, the couple straggling exclusives left. They're a bit really legacy at this point. Yeah, we have we can actually formulate just how well this trilogy did, and I found some good, I found some bad, and we're gonna kind of balance the two out. We'll do it like internet listing style of we're gonna do 5 things that didn't work, but we're also going to do 5 things that did work. I'm just going to talk about each one briefly. So, kind of a top 10, but kind of not. So, it's not a here's 10 or anything. But I figure let's start on the negative so we can finish on the positive at the end. So, what didn't work? Modulators. Modulators did not work. Part of it is only because they had 2 of them, so you only had 2 molds to work with, so you couldn't, like, when these were announced, everyone had grand ideas of building like huge micromaster cities out of all the ones they would end up doing, and then we got 2, and then just a few subsequent repaints of them. Really disappointing, really disappointing. If they had done 5 or 6, I think we could have had these big elaborate things built from all the different parts, and unfortunately did not get that, which is a shame. The only set I think really worked was the Amazon exclusive, where the 2 were released in matching colors, because that way you could actually, form a sizable base. The base modes themselves are just too small. Like the Micromasters look gigantic on them. You really couldn't play on them in any way, shape, or form. And really, like on their own, they didn't transform into much. And it's not even like a weaponizer thing. Like the weaponizers were okay, but a lot of the parts that came on modulators just didn't work for armor builds or weapon builds on your larger figures. There's creative people out there who did weird things with them, but for the most part, they could have done this a lot better. It also didn't help that they came up with a whole new ramp system that went against all the other ramp connections they had released in Titan class and some leader figures before this. Yeah, we could have had some nice cross compatibility there. Didn't work. You know what did work? Fossilizers. Fossilizers are fantastic. I think the pull apart and reassembled style of transformation works best on them because they're piles of bones. Even if you just disassemble them and leave them in a pile, it still looks like something, like a bone. It's a bone pile. And really interesting and unique designs came out of this. And I feel like the most fun I had was connecting these guys together, because even if they were like slightly different colors of bone, it was still all matching aesthetic. Unlike like it still worked. It still worked, and you can create some colossal looking behemoths out of all 3, or even if you want to start working in the repaints too. One day, I genuinely hope at some point Hasbro does just like I want a multi pack of like all of the modular fossilizers and in just matching colors. And then I'd like to buy 2 of each box so I can just build colossal bone monsters. That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. And yeah, this was actually cool and more thematic, I think, than what came in Siege and Earthrise, since it came right along with the Beast Wars toys. Okay, what didn't work? Micromasters didn't work. This was a pretty obvious one. Most of them were so simple that they transformed exactly alike, and they just weren't compelling or interesting toys on their own. And to try and give them some sort of accessory level with the larger figures, they gave them all these really really terrible weapon modes. Almost none of them look good in weapon mode. They're usually just cars glued together. And even in the individual figures, most of them kept the same engineering. Most of them transformed exactly the same way. Partially because they are trying to incorporate in handles, gun barrels, things that are overcomplicating what is already a design that's forced to be very simple. a little bit more articulation, a little bit more unique engineering across all of them, I think would have gone a long way to making these feel a little bit more special. And you know what? I would have taken just, like two for $10 if they had just been if they'd been more solid than they were, or just like a little bit larger, something, anything. But this could have been done a lot better. This one just did not work. You know what did work? The Commander class. I was debating adding in the core class, but we've had Transformers at that size class before. It's Legends. It's a little bit smaller than basic class. We don't need to retread that. Commander class was a new beast. I mean, it's bigger than even the old style leader toys. Not quite Titan class. It's an interesting way of working in a few figures that don't work as Titans, but are just way too big for leader class. Jetfire, Skylynx, all that. And I think it's a great way of releasing things like Rodimus Prime, who, you need that big trailer on him, otherwise you don't have his vehicle. It's not like Prime where you can get away with like, oh no, he doesn't need his trailer. He's still the truck. You just know the truck. And so far, they've all been hits. Like for a brand new size class, even across Titan class figures, I can spot a few that's like, that's not a great one. Nah, those are so much better. But across the commanders, we've gotten some extremely solid toys. So that is, I think, the one that I'm really looking forward to the most going forward. Though now Motor Master is going to be a little bit weird. It's going to be a little bit weird once we get to see how he works the size class. We'll see though. So far, really good. You know what didn't work? Battle Masters. So obviously things like this should have just been accessory pieces. Like once upon a time it would have been, but now budgets are different things. So they try to sell just Target Masters and then Target Masters style toys. Very few of them were intriguing. Mostly the melee weapons that came out. Those tended to be the good ones. But the guns, all the ones that are meant to look like old style Target Masters, boring. They were so boring. Even the blast effects could not save them. They were just uninteresting. And again, so many of them looked and worked the same. The once you bought one, it felt like you bought all of them. The only time you got away from that was when they were weapons, when they turned into like melee weapons. Those, again, were the interesting ones. But the bulk of them were the guns, and the guns were boring. Yeah, these cluttered so many shelves. These cluttered, like, this is like one of the bigger like size class failures I've seen out of Transformers. I don't remember any point where it looked like these were popular on a shelf. So yeah, nothing to say. They were just dull. You know what did work? The blast effects. The blast effects I thought were actually really cool. Blast effects are always fun for action figures. It gives you so much more life in your battle scenes, and Transformers took it a step farther. It wasn't just the blast effects that you could stick to the end of their guns, it was also the ones you could put to the end of their thrusters for their jets or spaceship modes. It was the little pegs you saw here and there on their chest or shoulder, so you can make it look like they took a blast. You know, little things like that. So good. So good. Now there is problems. The PVC has been known to give the ABS plastic problems when you leave them connected for too long. So this is something you can't just like assemble a shelf with a battle scene and call it a day, because some things will get damaged. But for photo ops and just for kids playing around, this was great. This was great. And I do like this Tricranius set in general, just for how many, like a ludicrous amount of blast effects that came out for it. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, blast effects worked. You know what didn't work? Voyager Plus. And when I say Voyager Plus, I mean a leader class toy that was basically just a Voyager with a whole bunch of extra parts thrown in. This was introduced during this trilogy, and it produces some interesting toys in that they get a little bit more budget than they would at the Voyager class, and then the rest of the $50 price point is loaded out with just meaningless guff, really. A ton of extra guns. Astro Train here came with what is essentially a coal car which doesn't incorporate into either of his vehicle modes and has nowhere to go in the robot mode. It's literally just a box full of guns that he can drag along with him, which is not interesting in any way, shape, or form, and really does not feel like it's worth the $50 that they asked for, even if the Astro Train figure itself is a good one. And I do like the Astro Train. It's just not the best, thanks to the big price point with all of his useless guns. And I would say the same for Shockwave. I really wish his armor, that like little accessory thing, integrated better. I wish his vehicle mode wasn't so dependent on having all that kibble. You lose one piece, you're out the vehicle mode. And it's not a submarine mode without them. There's no handle, you know? So I'm not a fan of this. And this is me knowing full well that this is what the Leader Class Blitzwing toy is going to end up being, which is going to break my heart. But you know what? Hopefully the price point lets him be like super good as a toy. And maybe the gun accessories won't be too bad. I don't know. You know what did work though? The exclusives we got. We got a lot of really cool exclusives this time. Now, retailers are generally the ones who ask for exclusives because it brings collectors in, gets them paying attention to their store. So it's not surprising that we had so many going around these days. And it does give Hasbro a great chance to release a lot of obscure characters that we wouldn't get, or interesting decos. The 35th anniversary Prime and Megatron with the cell shaded effect is a super cool look. Like, they look absolutely fantastic, and it's an extremely unique paint effect that we don't normally get to have. That I couldn't handle an entire toy line like that, but just a little bit, just a couple figures here, perfect. And that's what exclusives are great for. And of course, tons of second chances to get figures that otherwise were hard to find on a retail shelf for whatever reason, or just your favorite obscure character, whatever it was. We got tons of exclusives with the trilogy, and a lot were really good. You know what didn't work? Exclusives. Oh my god. These things were so annoying. There was just so many to keep track of. It was so hard to track some of these down. You try getting one of the Walgreens exclusives, if you missed the order online and they sold out, you were screwed. The Ratchet, I've got Siege Ratchet right here on my wall here at the toy shop. Current value on that is $120 because the thing was so impossible to find. And then the subsequent Amazon Ratchet was such a mess to order. So many people had problems with that. And if you ask me, it doesn't even look that good. I felt like it just looks too drab. It just looks too stark white and gray. Doesn't look good. The Siege one looks so much better, and it makes for a better toy. So yeah. And then you had all the mess with the Seekers, like the two packs getting all 6 Seekers. I know it's hard to get all 6 Seekers out in the span of 2 years. It's actually in the span of 1 year. What am I talking about? Yeah, it was super frustrating keeping track of all this, and I understand why. Because we as collectors, there's a lot of characters we want. There's a lot of the repaints and remolds that we expect to get, but there's only so many toys a retailer's going to take in. Every retailer, Walmart, we don't have Toys R Us anymore. Remember that. So Walmart and Target, and then now Walgreens of all places, takes in those exclusives, and there's really nowhere else that they can market exclusives to. So they go to Amazon, they go to Big Bad, and they end up being just like a crazy amount of them because they're not only trying to get more uses out of each mold, but also trying to get all the characters out that we've been asking for. So it's a mess. It really is a mess. It's the nature of the beast, though. So it's whatever. Hasbro needs to read the tea leaves better. Obviously Seekers needed to be a much better release than they ended up being. And maybe we don't need every literal version of Sideswipe possible. I don't think I need deep cover in black and blue. Just saying. So yeah, the exclusive worked and didn't work. But you didn't know what did work. What worked best for everything for me out of this trilogy? The Cybertronian modes. So the thing I think I love the most about the War for Cybertron trilogy is the fact that we got so many characters in both Cybertronian and Earth mode. I didn't mind that they were remolds of each other because that makes sense. It actually looks like the toy scanned in its Earth mode, and it kept its physical structure and appearance looking correct, looking the way we kind of imagine the character to be. So when you have Ironhide, you look here with the two Ironhides together, you can tell the difference between the two, but it still very much looks like the same character. And they are very different toys from each other, despite sharing the same engineering and a lot of the same parts. I also loved this because it meant that a lot of those repaint characters, like Deep Cover, like Barricade also, could have a different version on your shelf. I have Earthrise Prowl standing in as my, my classics slash generations Prowl, but I have the Siege version of Barricade on my shelf. So I get to have the two characters who are supposed to be, the same basic body type, but because of the way they did these Earth modes and Cybertronian modes, they do get to have some variance between themselves. And a collector like me that tends to sell off the old when the new comes out, it gives me an excuse to keep a hold of the old mold and still be able to experience it anytime I want without having to give it up for the sake of updating. This, I thought, made for a really, really interesting line. And it does solve that pre-Earth, post-Earth versions of the characters once and for all. We never really have to revisit this at any point, outside of maybe to get that hover van wheeljack. It's only the first Transformer we ever saw in the show. Maybe we get that at some point, but beyond that, I think this covers a lot of bases, and I think it came out really, really well. So that is my list. That is 5 things that worked and 5 things that didn't work amongst the War for Cybertron trilogy. What was your favorite part of this series of Transformers? What was your least favorite part? Let me know in the comments below. And who knows, we might do something like this for other toy lines. Because, I don't know, this is kind of fun to kind of instead of just being it's all bad or it's all good, I kind of like playing the middle line for once, So this was kind of fun. So let me know in the comments, what was your favorite part? What was your least favorite part? And of course, hit the subscribe button on your way out if you haven't already to find out when another one of these goes online. So hopefully I'll do this again at some point, and I will see you then. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.